Hi everyone, Zoe Kavada here, and I wanted to explain a little bit about my escape room that I created for this class. So a little background information that is also in my paper that's attached to this. I originally came up with a paper prototype that was kind of a version of Chutes and Ladders that would be a full course review game that I would use for my students at the end of the year before their Regents exam. When I was kind of testing out the logistics of it, it was just too much. I think it would work well if I used 1 or 2 units, or maybe did it as a midterm review with half the units, but for the time frame we have for this class, I decided to kind of switch gears and do something that I could actually use in my class in the near future. So my students are currently working on nuclear chemistry, and we do have a test coming up right before Thanksgiving break. So this worked out perfectly, and I could actually test it in my class. I decided to play test this with one of my smaller sections that's actually a little bit ahead. It's only 10 students, so we're not quite at the end of the unit yet. We have about this upcoming week left of some material that has to be covered, but I wanted to test it obviously for the time frame of this class. So some of the material that we haven't covered yet, I kind of had to guide them through, but I did actually get to test this with a group of my students that I will be using it on in a week or so. So this is a Google slide, and I created the escape room on nuclear chemistry. And for those of you who may not know about an escape room, you have to come up with all these codes, and then you get to a final code, and then you've escaped the room, and you're kind of up against the clock. I gave my students 50 minutes, but the goal would be that the first group to finish and escape wins, and I bribed them with some extra credit to make it so that students would continue to try in case they don't finish first. I want them to continue on with the room. I kind of set it up as like the first group gets 5 points, and then it went down from there. And then the last couple of groups to finish would get 1 extra credit point just for finishing the room in the time frame. So 50 minutes worked out well. That was one thing I tested with my students. We have an 80-minute period, so by the time I take attendance and get them seated and we take out our chemistry stuff, I explain an escape room. Most of them knew what it was because they were the ones who helped me come up with the idea to do one, but some didn't. And we kind of review nuclear chemistry right before we get into it. 50 minutes ended up being a perfect amount of time. So here are some directions that I gave them that they could refer back to. Something I incorporated was they have the opportunity for 2 hints, but each hint will cost them 2 minutes. So they can kind of risk that if they think it's really going to help them move forward, or not use them at all and just try to kind of struggle as a group to get the right answer. This is the main page, and I'm going to pause that. This is the main page where they're kind of working off of, but each of these links to a slide within the slideshow presentation. I made the numbers obvious here with the final code being over here by the door because I didn't want them kind of struggling to find that. This is being used as a review game in class, and I wanted them to actually be able to find where the links were. But I think in the future, if I were to maybe make it a few less codes, maybe only 3, I could make it a little less obvious where the codes are, and part of the Google Forms, when they submit their correct answer, would give them a hint as to where the next code was. And that would definitely make it more like an escape room, but this was a lengthy unit, nuclear chemistry, so I wanted each code kind of assesses a different topic within the unit. So 5 codes worked out well, but I think in the future, once we kind of get good at this and students get used to doing these, I could definitely make those less obvious and give them more hints as to where to find the next code. So this is a timer which I'm having some issues with. When I leave the slide, and then come back, it starts over. So that's one thing I'm still working on. But if I were to click on number 1, it brings me to the slide that has the questions to help the students get to the first code. One thing I did incorporate was each code, to get the code, different elements are kind of incorporated. So this one, they're actually literally using elements to kind of create a sentence. And when they think they have it, they're finding the missing X's here, which are going to be elements. They click on this link, first code link. They'll click on that they want to type in the first code. They'll click next. And I tell them to be careful about capitalization because these are elements, but the code is supposed to be chem, is lit, kind of light. If it's right, they can click submit. If they got it wrong, let's say I did N Ken F L-I or something T, and I tried to submit it, it would say try again because it's wrong. But if I tried to submit the right one, it will let me submit it. So that's how students know that they were right. Then they can go back to the escape room. They can click all the slides for each code, have a return to room, and then they move on to the next one. One thing I did incorporate after play testing this with my students, so I kind of was testing the logistics of that and making sure all the links worked, and they did. The other thing was students do have access to all of the slides if they want to skip ahead, and I was kind of worried about that piece, but my students were so engaged in this and really wanted the extra credit. Anytime I say extra credit, they'll do anything, so they weren't really worried about trying to cheat. But also this was a small group of students, so it was easier for me to walk around the room and manage. So what I did was for the final code, if they get it, click on this link. When they're done, when they click on final time, because they have to put what time they finished in case it was before the 50 minutes is up, click next. They not only have to put in the duration of the time, they also have to upload all 5 codes in order to receive full credit. So that helps to make sure that they are moving along and moving forward and skipping out on different codes and trying to just jump to the final code to win. So I'm going to be testing that on my other classes for real next week, and so I'll kind of let you know how that goes. But any feedback that you have on this or how I can make this a little bit more simple, I'd really appreciate. But it did go really well, and I'm really excited, and I think my students had a blast doing it. Thank you.